Good evening. This is your host, F1 Blag, and we're here to mark the passing of the 12 days of Christmas here on Georgie's Stripping the Dipping. I'd like to turn to our first reading, Wiz Khalifa, Chorus 1. We've come a long way from where we began. Oh, I'll tell you all about it when I see you again. When I see you again. Thank you. And without further ado, with emotions high, let's roll the tape. On the 12th day of Christmas, Georgie booked for me 12 years of producing the driver radio for Formula One.
So just to give anyone who's listening a little bit of background. So I'm not from a rich family. I'm not from a private school. I'm just an ordinary kid who grew up in Kent, who went to a normal state school. And I remember going to see the careers advisors. I don't know if you guys went through all of that, but at our school, they brought people in and they said, okay, what is it you want to do when you grow up? And I always used to say, I want to work on Match of the Day, the football program in England. And they were like, okay, what about being a plumber though? Or maybe a carpenter? And I was like, well, no, not really. This is what I've always wanted to do. So as ridiculous as it sounded to them and to my friends and family, that was what I always wanted to do. So I, and this is obviously pre-internet, pre-email, even pre-fax probably as well. So back in those days, you had to either pick up the telephone and try and get to speak to somebody who you wanted to work for, or you wrote them a handwritten letter, which is what I did to the BBC Sport Department. And I was fortunate enough to get some work experience. So I used to go and spend my weekends working on Match of the Day for free and on Grandstand. I used to sit behind the presenter as one of the many guys in the background. And you just kind of made connections through there, work for free. So I studied all week. I'd play football on Sundays. But yeah, so I used to go up to London from Kent on my own as a 16, 17, 18-year-old and just work away and make contacts like that. So that's how I first got a foot in the door, essentially. As part of our second year or third year, maybe, we had to do, as well as our dissertation, we had to do a special project. So going back to that BBC mention that I mentioned earlier, so back at that time, BBC was still making the Formula One coverage. So I thought it would be a very clever idea of me to go wandering around the corridor and knock on the office door of the head of BBC's Formula One coverage and say, how would you feel about me and my two friends on my course making a student documentary on how the BBC produced the 1995 British Grand Prix? And he said, yeah, I think that would be a good idea. We've never done it before, but yeah, we don't mind. So I used that contact that I'd made before, and then we wrote to Bernie Ecclestone, who was the be-all and end-all for Formula One. So we thought we were being really, really clever by me using my contacts and what great ideas. We'd made all these plans, and we got I think it was a one-sentence fax reply through our college that said basically, no, you won't be doing this documentary. So we were rejected and all our plans were kind of in tatters. So basically I badgered for about 3 months non-stop. And in the end, he said, yep, okay, you can do it. Just don't get yourselves killed. So, so eventually we got to do it. So we went up with the BBC, myself and my two colleagues from my two student friends. And we spent a week at Silverstone filming, meeting BBC presenters. We interviewed Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill and Murray Walker. It was fabulous. Really, really good.
To bring it on to the next subject here, Ari, let's talk more about your role. So, you've briefly kind of told us like that you work with the Formula One management group. You've been there now for 12 years, which is amazing, because it feels like in Formula One, no one's really there long. So if you're there for 12 years, it means you're doing a really great job, must I add. But Yeah, tell our audience more about your role within kind of what you do with the sport and the TV production side of it. How did the opportunity come about from what you were doing before? And actually, what does a race weekend look like for you in terms of your duties and arriving at the track, assuming that you're one of the traveling members of the crew?
Yep. Okay. So lots of things to answer, and you're going to have to nudge me on a lot of those because I'm going to forget those. But okay, let me firstly start by saying, since COVID, we remote produce the production now at Biggin Hill at the MNCC in Kent. So we travelled for a long time, and there's plenty of people who've worked for Formula One for a lot longer than me. Just to be clear, so I'm not a full-time employee. I'm a freelancer. But yeah, so 12 years now. So let's go back a bit. So how did I start there? Okay, so about the documentary that we made at the 1995 British Grand Prix, and I went there with two student friends. So one of those guys is now the director of the broadcast of the International World Feed and has worked there for 20 something years now. So we were best friends at university, spent every day together, studying together, playing snooker after every day of lectures together. And then we didn't see each other for about 15 years. Both left the town we grew up in. I don't do social media. And he thought I went into a black hole, disappeared into a cave by not being on Facebook or Twitter. And we bumped into each other one day, 12 years ago. And I said, "Oh, brilliant. How are you, mate? What are you up to?" And he said, "Oh, I work for Formula One." And he was always the Formula One nut, not me. I was always the football nut. But I loved Formula One, but not as much as him and nowhere near as technical as him. So he said, "Come and meet my boss. Come and have a chat." And he was like, "Well, asking what I'd done and etc." So I went and had a chat with the boss, and I've basically been there ever since. So yes, I got into Formula One doing the job I'm doing through my connection, through my university friend. But basically, that only gets you so far. It gets you in the building, but it doesn't keep you in the building. So you've got to keep yourself in the building. So that's how I joined Formula One, which is a bit of a weird sort of full circle from our student days. So the job I do, I'm the team radio producer, one of a team. Team radio is just one small team in a much bigger production, and we all have our input, obviously, to the TV side. So my job is to decide every single clip that any viewer hears on the International World Feed. So it doesn't matter which country you're in, you'll be listening to the clips that I find interesting. So essentially, that's the job that I actually fulfill for Formula One.
How do you take the kind of stuff that's really pertinent and the stuff that is going to grab the attention of the listeners or be something of interest to fans with this kind of the regular stuff that the drivers probably say to the engineers all the time?
Yeah, I don't even know really. I just do it. I just know it when I've heard it. I would so in terms of where my sort of everyone's got their own their own opinions on what's good and what's bad. So as some people could be watching a race for the very first time, and someone could have been watching for the last 50 years and know everything about how to disassemble a Formula One car and put it back together. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle. So I'm not technical. I'm no expert. I'm not an Adrian Newey. Equally, it's not my first race either, so I do understand what things mean when I'm, so I know what a pit stop is. I know what a flag colour means, etc., etc. So you've got to remember that you're catering to the mass audience and not exclude anybody. You want everyone to enjoy what you're playing. But I think fundamentally, if you forget the words team and radio, essentially we're storytellers. We're there to tell a story. So I try to make sure that every time that team radio graphic pops up on your television screen, I really want people to go, "Oh, hang on, let's listen to this. Stop talking, everyone. I want to hear what this driver or this engineer or this team principal is going to say." So I like to think we've got there, and everyone's got their own opinion. Anyone who does my job would have a different selection that I have, but I don't know. I mean, you're trying to entertain, you're trying to inform. So whether that's, if there was no team radio, you'd be watching cars going around in circles. Now, let's take the race that's just gone. So Singapore, the whole weekend, if you bear in mind Red Bull's dominance so far this season, if you were watching that without team radio from Friday to Sunday, you might be thinking, okay, so Max and Checo are having an off weekend. Well, they weren't, because they're elite athletes and elite drivers. There was a reason behind, the reason they're not dominating this particular weekend, and they can tell that story themselves. So whether that's to do with the front or rear end, or the upshifts and downshifts that Max was complaining about, or Checo with the rear end stepping out, or the brakes, we can educate and inform, but also entertain at the same time. So everyone seems to really enjoy a Max and GP row or discussion, I should say. But so without team radio, the viewers wouldn't have a clue what's gone on then until the drivers have got out of the cars, gone to the media pen and done their interviews. So, it's a combination of all those things.
Absolutely there, Ray. Well, on the topic of positives, like, we're going to get some fan questions in as well before we go. But Ray, let's start off with what would you say is the funniest driver radio message you've heard? One of our fans wanted to know, and also they've kind of put their own nominations in there if there was any that you hadn't thought of before. So we've got Kimi Raikkonen.
Tell me what they put first before I tell you mine. Because
sure.
Honestly, it's hard to pick one out. So I've probably forgotten loads that we played. Go on, read those to me.
Sure. So we've got Kimi Raikkonen's infamous "Leave me alone, I know what I'm doing," which went down quite well in Abu Dhabi a couple of years ago. We've got Pablo Montoya's "Oh dear," and context of this was I think a deer had run onto the circuit.
On the track.
And the team were trying to tell him, like, there's a deer there, and Pablo decided to get quite witty and use a double entendre in terms of saying, "Oh dear," So
yeah, I've seen it on YouTube. Yeah.
So there was that. And even in more recent history, we were talking about Singapore being the most recent Grand Prix we've been to. A couple of years ago, Max Verstappen was driving around the streets of Singapore, and there was a huge lizard, to which Max said something to the effect of, "There's a giant lizard on the track." Then, this week, Max to be driving around, and then, there was like a poor little cute lizard that was walking on the floor and flicking out his tongue, and him and GP were having a whole 2-minute conversation, like, on his outlap about how this mini lizard could be the son of, like, the favored lizard from a couple of years ago, and probably the son of Godzilla.
Yeah, I think we had 3 yellow flags on Friday. Yeah, all for lizards, if that's the official name. Crossing track. Yeah, GP said I think maybe Godzilla's had a kid. I think we played. Yeah. So I can't take any credit for the Juan Pablo Montoya one. That was before I joined. The Kimi Raikkonen one was my first season. That was in 2012 in Abu Dhabi. And I very nearly didn't play that one because it was a really crackly transmission. I mean, these days it's great because we've got the ability to write it as well as broadcast it, as well as playing the clip. We're doing fine, no problem at all. But I do remember that one. I thought I'm sure I played a subsequent one in the same race. So it was Simon Rennie, who ended up being Daniel Ricciardo's engineer, I think, was Kimi's engineer at the time, and then Kimi said to him a few minutes later, or later on in the race, he said, I'm doing it all the time. You don't have to keep reminding me every 10 seconds or something to that effect. I think it's warming all 4 tires or something like that. I remember the first time we played Lewis with okay, Lewis, it's hammer time from Bono. I remember the editor sat next to me at the time. He said, "We're not playing that, are we?" I was like, "Yes, we're playing that." And it just became a thing, it just sort of, it's weird the way the thing catches up. So Max and his Simply Lovely carries on. We've had loads of stuff. I think Jenson Button was asked maybe 2013 how are the tyres? And he said, yeah, black and round, same as usual, or something like that. But you get the odd fun, Lando's quite funny. Carlos Sainz is quite sort of dry and witty in his comments. I think, was it Jensen stood in for Fernando? I can't remember what year, in Monaco, maybe 2018.
Was this the one where you threatened to pee in his car?
Yeah, he said, I'm going to pee in your seat or something like that. That was quite good. But yeah, I just forget half of them. I mean, not even the funny one. I mean, Danny Rick was always, really good entertainment as well. And, sometimes you got to lick the stamp and send it. I mean, I'd never even thought of that. Honestly, I thought that was really good. What else? Gasly over the line celebrating in Monza, and was it Sao Paulo as well? But yeah, I just when he goes mad, he properly goes mad, with excitement. But there's so many, and I'm sure I'm forgetting loads of them. But yeah, Vettel was very good as well, actually, really good.
Oh well, Vettel's given us so many ones. I'm even thinking of I think there's that one lap. He got pole at I think it was Mexico. It must have been 2019 or something to that effect. And I think he was at pole position.
Yeah. I'm not now you said that, I'm not sure I worked that race, or maybe I was doing a different role that race, because I don't think I played that one. But yeah, I know what you mean. And all the what are we doing here? Racing all ping pong. That sort of stuff. It is good. Honestly, if I sat and thought about it for hours, there's loads that make us laugh. But again, when we hear it, we're the same as you guys when you're hearing it on your TVs. We are cracking up laughing sometimes when we hear some of the stuff they come out with. And obviously some of it you can't play, but most of it is just so funny and really, really good.
Thank you very much for listening to the 12 Days of Christmas here on Georgie's Stripping the Dipping podcast. I've been your unusual co-host F1 Blag. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and give us a follow both on Twitter and on Instagram at Strip the Dip. Until next time, bye.